All right, and welcome everybody to the Acumatica Manufacturing Edition overview demonstration. We are going to dive into the real script today of how one would be performing this particular manufacturing overview demonstration. So you should be able to see my screen right now, which is just sharing some slides. Maybe Jeff Spears, if you are not able to see the slides, just give me a shout. But important to always keep in mind in our pre-sales webinars, they are not necessarily full product training. Again, as I mentioned, there is so much to learn about Manufacturing Edition, and if you're looking for very detailed product training, implementation or consulting training, we of course have courses designed for that. Our purposes today are really more to help you learn how to demonstrate the product. So this script that I'm using today can be found in the portal at the Demo University, our favorite pre-sales page. And let's jump in. Now, as I had alluded to, there is a whole lot of software that actually lives behind the scenes of Manufacturing Edition. And when you look at the center of my screen here, these are the 6 modules that are actually part of our Manufacturing Edition. Now, the ones that have that asterisk are optional modules. So in other words, these 2 modules in the top left are going to be considered the core manufacturing modules. And those are the 2 modules that we will focus on in our demo today. So the bill of materials, in my opinion, is always the best place to start in a manufacturing demo. Really helps you to lay the groundwork of what you'll be presenting later on in the demo. And then we'll take that bill of materials, all of our planned costs and our plan for production, and we will use the production module to transform that plan into finished goods. We will track the costs during production, etc. Now, there is, again, many other modules that are part of Manufacturing Edition. We typically will do separate webinars like this one to cover those additional modules. So look out for those. There are a few up posted on the portal already if you haven't had a chance to catch those in the past. And that was just highlighting what our focus is today at the top. Now, as a reminder, for those of you that are maybe new partners, new to selling Manufacturing Edition, there are several types of manufacturers out there in the world, and they are typically going to be producing using one of these types here. Are they making to stock? That is maybe just working off of a build to stock plan. In our example today, we'll use a Keurig machine. I'm sure some of you have seen that. So we're just going to continually sell our Keurigs, which means we will continually build them into stock. Make to order is for our prospects and customers that are creating production orders or manufactured items based on specific sales orders. So they are making against specific sales orders. We can create a sales order first, link a production order to that. Same thing with engineer to order. This is also a form of make to order, but it could also involve using manufacturing estimates. It could involve using the product configurator. It could even involve using a CAD system. So we do certainly support the engineer to order space as well. Project-centric companies, maybe construction companies that are also doing manufacturing is a good example. Job shops, repetitive companies, and also companies that are doing batch manufacturing, food and beverage companies, chemical producers, cosmetics companies. Those are all really great examples of batch manufacturers. Now, I just mentioned a few of those markets. You heard me mention food and beverage, cosmetics. So just to highlight some of our supported markets, for all of our partners on the line, I cannot recommend to you enough that you start in 2021, if you haven't done it already, targeting specific micro verticals. You know, if it's cosmetics manufacturers that you would like to go after this month, then you can organize a very, very detailed campaign to go out there and start tackling these common pain points and outcomes that all cosmetics manufacturers are looking for. So I can't suggest that enough. Try to pick a micro vertical, and we can help you at the pre-sales team level, even organize some demonstrations, some videos to go with that micro vertical. Anyway, these are not the only manufacturing markets that Acumatica supports. We certainly support others outside of this, but these are some of the most common ones that we tend to see. And for those of you that just need a refresher on what the actual certification process looks like, that is each partner practice, what do they need to do to become certified on our manufacturing edition? There are 4 courses that fall within that. One is the E320 sales certification. Another is the R320 pre-sales certification. And then our implementation consultants are asked to go through the M210 and the M200 courses. So these are, again, based on role. So those of you on the line today will most likely, if you haven't already, be required to go through the R320 course to earn your manufacturing pre-sales consultant badge. All right, let's get into it. Here is my agenda of the demo script. And the configuration, for those of you that have been following our releases, is actually much less work. We used to have to install a customization package for our manufacturing edition, and we rolled that completely into the standard product as of 2020 R2. So you'll see that all you have to do is enable the features now, and then we'll go through a demo flow. We always start with dashboards. We'll look at a stock item record for the item that we're going to be manufacturing. Really, when we get into the true manufacturing demo, bill of materials will be a good chunk of your demo. You're setting up the groundwork for what you'll be showing later on in production. And then when we get to production, something that's important for everyone on the line to understand is your demonstration is very much going to be focused on the type of manufacturer that you are working with. It may seem obvious, it may not, but if you are working with a company that only engineers every product they make, maybe they're creating, I don't know, giant factory machines and they're doing them custom based on individual orders, well, you're likely not going to show them the make to stock method because that's not going to be used by their business. So it's important during discovery to identify how your prospect is manufacturing, and then you can follow one of these 4 examples in my script to actually be able to demonstrate that. MRP, just in the essence of time, we probably won't have time to get into that today. I will try my hardest, and if not, we have done separate sessions on that in the past that are out on the portal. Okay, so I'll really try to stick away from the slides and just take you through the software as I do this demo. Of course, the slides are up on the portal, so if you would like to follow along with what I'm doing in the software on the slides, then feel free. But let me go ahead and now share my instance of Acumatica versus my PowerPoint slides. All right, so you should be seeing Acumatica now. Again, Jeff, give me a shout if you are seeing anything else. But for those of you that have not either demonstrated Manufacturing Edition before or it's been a while, just as a recap, as of 2020 R2, all you have to do now when you install Manufacturing Edition, when you install Acumatica period, as well as when you install the demo snapshot, is you will navigate to this enable disable features page, and you will enable the manufacturing modules. So you can see that I have them enabled already, but you simply have to check the modules that you would like enabled and go ahead and do that. That's really all that's required now. Much, much easier, no customization package. There is no separate demo snapshot. So thank you, Debbie Baldwin, if you happen to hear this recording. I know she worked hard on that. And now you're ready to go. So we will start, as I mentioned, with a manufacturing dashboard. And the production manager dashboard is, of course, in your dashboards workspace. You'll see there's a few examples here. Production manager and engineering are the top two that I use. To be quite candid, the manufacturing one is a little bit redundant at this time. So the production manager dashboard is giving that bird's eye view of everything that a production manager would be concerned about that is happening within their organization. We are keeping an eye on work capacities, and we are taking a look at production orders that are late and any variances that might be occurring, whether they might be based on labor or materials. As you all know, as pre-sales engineers, we always like to start with these dashboards because they help us to tell a very good story of what's occurring across the business. So feel free to start with your production manager dashboard. You might also want to call up your engineering manager dashboard, only if applicable to your prospect. Remember, not everybody does engineering. Not everybody needs engineering change control, for example. So no need to bring this dashboard up, but if it's necessary, by all means, it shows very nicely. Now, the first thing that I like to do after I've highlighted dashboards and the power of the business intelligence, we're getting there, is I'll usually take all of my audience to the stock item record for the finished good that I am going to utilize in my demonstration. Again, the Keurig is the old trusty manufacturing item that exists in the demo data, but I cannot encourage you enough to install, or I shouldn't say install, but create your prospects demo data inside of your Acumatica environment, build their stock items, build their bills of materials, and really help them to bring their business to life. Of course, if that's not always possible, we do give you the demonstration data to utilize. So here we are in the Keurig record. Some of the items to include here, and I will remind you of demo crimes along the way. Please do not highlight every single field on every screen that I am showing you today. That field the fielder demo crime is going through every single field and every single tab. And I know that we all get stuck sometimes in the habit of doing that. Please stop doing that and remember to pull yourself away. Only be highlighting the pieces that are adding value to a manufacturing business in our example today. So things like item types. All manufacturers are going to need to categorize their inventory based on, well, is something a finished good that I am actually producing and selling out of stock versus my component parts that go into those finished goods. We do absolutely support sub-assemblies as well. So those would be the multiple sub-items that need to be manufactured before we can actually get to our finished good. Our example today with the Keurig does have some sub-assemblies within it, so I can show you some examples of that today. Again, this is important to a manufacturer, which is why I've listed it in my script, and which is why I'm highlighting it here. Next, lot and serial traceability is usually going to be a requirement for manufacturers. Not always, but lot and serial support, we'll give you some great examples. Batch manufacturers that are making food or beverages, cosmetics, chemicals, they are going to need to track not only lot numbers, but they will need to track expiration dates along with those lot numbers. So let your audience know that this is where the lot and serial automation begins. And as you go through your demo, you can highlight some examples of that lot and serial traceability. And let's see, again, I won't discuss everything here. Many of you on the line today are more than familiar with stock item records, but under the manufacturing tab, you will see that I have my default bill of materials for the Keurig. So that's where we'll go next. But before I do that, just take a look at my replenishment settings down at the bottom. This is where we are actually going to be indicating the replenishment or the MRP settings for this item. What is the minimum order quantity? Every time we produce this on the shop floor, how many need to go on the order? Is there a lead time to actually manufacture this? It's going to take us 5 days to make a Keurig. Well, no, we can do many of these in a day. this is a day-based lead time, so it's going to be 0 today. And then, of course, reorder point safety stocks. Now, let's go into that bill of materials, because as I mentioned, that is really where you're starting to set up everything that you're going to do later on in the production side of your demonstration. The bill of materials, I like to think of it as a template for production. Here is everything that we are planning on doing, and then we will go out and actually produce those items with those costs, with those materials during the production side of this. So when we look at a bill of materials, there's sort of 3 sections here. We have the summary section up in the top. We have the operations in the details or the middle of my screen. And then down at the bottom, we have the operation-based details. So the details of the details, if you will allow me to say so. That is, each one of these operations is tied to the information we're seeing at the bottom. Right now I'm seeing the materials for my assembly operation, but when I go over to my inspection, you'll note there are no materials tied there. So these are the details of the operations that we're seeing here. Most important things to note in your bill of materials demonstrations. One would be revision control. Make sure that your audience is well aware that we do have the ability to support revisions as well as engineering changes. So twofold there. Revision control is basic and available to all manufacturing users. If they would just like to create a revision B, update something on that bill, and swap in a new date, then that is perfectly fine. If they are looking for more detailed engineering change control, they need to actually send a change order through an approval process, get a second set of eyes on that before we come out with a new revision, for example. We do have that full engineering change control as well. Now, in the middle of the screen, I discussed that these are going to be the operations, often referred to as the routing. So what routing do we need to perform in order to create this finished good? And in our example today, we're needing to go through an assembly and needing to go through an inspection in order to come out with that finished good. Each one of these operations, if you look over on the right-hand side, gets tied to setup time, run units, run time, etc. But what do these actually mean? Well, the run time and the run units is saying how many items can we produce per hour? How many Keurigs can we assemble over the course of 1 hour? And the answer is 10 in this example. So 10 Keurigs per hour can be produced in Work Center 10 is another way to read that. Over here with the inspection, you can see that we have additional time entered here. The setup time being how long does it actually take to set up that operation? Do we need to maybe clean the station, sterilize the station before we do something? And then machine time, similar to the run units, is how many machine units can you process within 1 hour in this example. Now, within, or I should say tied to each one of those operations is a work center. So the work center is where the operation is actually occurring. And within those work centers, you can set up a number of information, or lots of information, I should say. One piece being machines. So where do we actually understand the machines that are going to be involved in the manufacturing process? We set that up within each work center. So you can actually schedule at the work center level, or you can schedule at the machines within the work centers. There's also a tooling option available, but we most commonly see machine and work center scheduling. Also, shift information gets included at the work center level. So you can see that we've actually created different calendars which are going to identify, okay, well, Work Center 10 operates Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. but there's a 1 hour break time within there as well that those machines shouldn't be running and that we should not be paying our employees during that time. You can also include holidays or exceptions in here if you would like to. All right, and actually last thing about the work center would probably be the standard cost. So you are going to apply the standard cost of each work center. In other words, anytime we are performing an assembly in work center 10, we're going to apply a $20 standard labor cost unless the system tells us to do otherwise. In other words, you could choose to use the standard cost of an individual machine. By overriding this standard cost of the work center, you could actually use the standard cost of a machine. Okay, so we talked about operations, we talked about work centers, we did discuss materials a bit, but I also just want you to keep in mind that those materials can either be individual component parts or they could actually be sub-assemblies that have their own bills of materials. The result of that, when you put a material that has its own bill, or I should say a subassembly that has its own bill, on a parent bill of materials, is you are going to get a multi-level bill of materials. So in our example, I believe the inlet and the circuit board are my two subassemblies. So when I go up to my report and I hit multi-level, I am going to be able to see, and I'll pick the costed version of this. Now when I zoom into this, a little bit hard to see, so bear with me here, but this is what a multi-level bill of materials looks like. In other words, we know we are creating the Keurig, and every time we see a new level indented on our multi-level bill of materials, that indicates that there is a subassembly that needs to be built. So here we're saying, and this is again, for those of you that haven't seen a multi-level, maybe a little bit tricky on the eyes, but for those of you that are more familiar with this, here are our two subassemblies. We have at level 0, the inlet and the circuit board, if you recall. Those are our two subassemblies. Underneath that, we see the things that are required to go into those subassemblies. So the inlet is actually going to require at level 1, a base unit, a pump, a harness, and a screw. But if you look, there's an additional level which even says not only do we need this base unit, but we actually have to put these 4 items at level 2 inside of that base unit before we can even come up with the inlet, okay? So this is a tree that is going to show all of the different sub-assemblies that are required with all of their components rolling up into the final finished good. All right, a little bit about actually let's go back to the bill of materials and just close off a few more things here. If you look at these additional tabs over near my materials, I can go in and list out steps if I would like to. So if I would like to indicate what the person needs to do on the shop floor, you know, assemble based on drawing, whatever it might be. You can include those instructions for the operator at Work Center 10, but you can also include things like files or even video attachments. So if you actually wanted to include drawing 2243 as a file attachment here, then that operator can now drill right in, grab that file, and start assembling based on those instructions. Overhead can certainly be applied to each bill of material operation. That can be fixed overhead, that can be variable overhead based on a number of different factors. And we do support outside processing as well. What outside processing is going to do is going to allow you to attach a vendor to a specific operation. So if you are subcontracting something, I'll use that sterilization example. We manufacture scalpels and then we get to operation 2 and we need to send it out to be sterilized by another organization. We might want to set up an operation to do that. tag that subcontractor as a vendor here, and then we can even create ship lists, pick lists, and shipment documents to send the materials to those subcontractors. So the outside processing piece is certainly there as well. Now, oops, I just saw a mistake in my slides that I'm following along with, so let me make a note. All right. Final thing that I want just to mention in the bill of materials section, for those of you that, again, are familiar with this, allow me to explain to those who don't, but it's this concept of back flushing. What back flushing means is that you are essentially going to auto-consume the requirements from the bill of materials. So here's what I'm talking about when I say that. We know that every time we have to manufacture a Keurig, these are the items that we're going to need. If we choose to back flush those items, that is going to indicate that every time we have manufactured one Keurig, we are automatically going to consume or back flush these 5 components from inventory. It's essentially assuming that you did not make any deviation from your plan and that you moved forward based on that bill. That is what back flushing is going to do, an auto consumption of the bill. Now, a lot of manufacturers do not back flush. They will actually want to create material transactions, and we certainly have the ability to do both. Same thing applies with labor. We do offer the ability to back flush labor costs as well. So if it's always going to take us, 1 or 10 minutes to do an inspection, we might just want to back flush that labor cost to account for that 10 minutes instead of needing the employees to go in there every time and enter their 10 minutes of time that they spent on an inspection. Okay, so just a little bit about back flushing, because I certainly know when I was new to manufacturing, I needed a lot of clarification actually on what that meant. And now that you've finished your bill of materials section, the next part of your demo, the production part of your demo, as I mentioned earlier, is absolutely going to be based on what type of manufacturer that you are working with. So just back to my slides, if some of you are following along on the side, this is the part where you have to decide which method to demonstrate. I'm going to start with the make to stock method. We'll highlight a make to order method, and I should have time. Actually, you can actually do configure to order at the same time. So we will do that today. But again, just keep in mind, you only want to pick the required production method for your audience. You don't need to show all of these. Well, Jessica put them in the script, so I showed all of them. I made sure to include that disclaimer to pick the one that is suited to your prospect. So we will start with make to stock. And as a reminder, manufacturers that produce using the make to stock method typically do not use sales orders in the production process. They will really do exactly as the name implies. They produce or they make to stock in inventory. And in that case, we could just start with a production order in a make to stock example. Now, many make-to-stock manufacturers need to get clarification on how many they need to produce. So they could use MRP to tell them, here are all of the suggestions that we are telling you to manufacture this month. If you look here, actually, it's saying from an MRP standpoint that we need to manufacture 4 Keurigs. So I could go out and actually manufacture this. But if you follow this all the way over, the reason it's telling me to manufacture those Keurigs is because of a specific sales order. Now, if I was producing based on a make-to-stock method, I might see a safety stock or a master production schedule created for my make-to-stock items. In other words, let's take my master production schedules here. You might, I used this example a while back, but I had done tasty cakes. For those of you that are familiar with that dessert, I had said, okay, for the month of December, we're going to manufacture 500 cases of Tastykakes, and then MRP would highlight the 500 units, excuse me, that need to be manufactured. So again, the piece I'm highlighting here is how does a make-to-stock manufacturer understand what they need to manufacture? And that typically comes from MRP, or it might just come from reorder points. And with that, let's just go in and start creating our item that we've been using today, which is the Keurig. And we will just say that we are going to produce, let's do 10 of them just to keep it simple. I'll produce 10 of these to stock today. And as I enter that item on the production order, a few things happen. First of all, we are going to see that the bill of materials gets pulled in to the order itself. So everything that we just went through, all of the sub-assemblies and the costs of those materials and the operations that are required and the time that it takes to perform those operations, we now have all of those details laid out here under this source field. And I can either pull up the bill of materials to take a look, or I can actually go into the production detail for this order, which looks exactly like the bill of materials that we just saw, because it is. However, this is now the details for this exact order. So anything I change on the production details for this order is not going to change that overarching parent bill of materials. It would just allow me to make on-the-fly changes for this order if I needed to. Now, next things that I will typically cover in my demonstration is I'll highlight under this general tab, there's a few important fields here. One is dispatch priority. That is from a scheduling standpoint, you can prioritize your orders. So if you would like to say, all of the orders with a priority 1 are going to get scheduled ahead of the orders with a priority 3, 4, 5, that's what dispatch priority is for. 1 is the highest priority in Acumatica and 10 is the lowest. So your dispatchers or your scheduling team can use that priority field to complete scheduling. And it's also available on the scheduling screens as well. And the dates I will usually talk about as well. We saw before that it does not take more than 1 day to assemble a Keurig. However, if we are looking at longer lead times for some of these manufactured items, you would want to talk about the start and end dates here. We do support both forward and backward scheduling. So you could actually use the constraint date as the date to start on, or you could use the constraint date as the date you want to finish your production on. Is, January 15th the day you want to begin production or the day you want to end production, and we can help you fill in the schedule around that. Now let's see here, moving right along. The totals tab is very important to your demo. This is going to highlight how the job costs for this particular job look at any point in time. So on the left-hand side, this is everything that we planned on doing with the bill of materials that we started with. So all of these planned costs are coming from that bill. In the center of the screen, we will start to capture our actual costs of production. And that is going to depend, back to our conversation around backflushing, on if your manufacturing prospect is backflushing or not. In other words, are they creating separate material and labor transactions, or are they really doing light assembly, fast assembly, moving through the production line quickly, and they would simply like to account for those costs and materials? That's the example we're going to use right now. And for those of you that are demonstrating to, a light manufacturer, a basic assembler, this is probably the method that you would go with, the backflushing method. And you complete your production orders by creating what are called move transactions. Kind of a funky name, but I will show you what it means. First thing we do is we release the production order. That just means we are done planning the order and we have now released it to the shop floor. We're ready to start working on it. And like I mentioned now, we can quickly move this through the process. If you wanted to pull up a production ticket to show your audience the abilities that they have to either just move a job traveler, which is another name for a production ticket, around the shop floor. Some manufacturers still prefer to print a physical piece of paper with their job traveler and send it from station to station. We're seeing a lot more manufacturers do this with tablets and smartphones. So this is what the details for this order look like on a production ticket. If you look here, it's all of the same bill of materials details that we've been working with, just more consumable, can be used to actually scan on the shop floor, etc. Here's the finished good. We see the operations that need to be performed. We see the assembly. We will see the inspection over on page 2. And then within each one of those details, you also see all of the materials that are required. So here's the inlet, the circuit board, everything that needs to be, or needs to go into this operation, which needs to be performed to get to that finished good. So up to you if your prospects are using production tickets, which most of the time they are, you would likely show that next. And then we go through and quickly complete the order by creating those transactions I mentioned, which are called move transactions. What is a move transaction? What this means is you are moving from one operation to the next. And why I mentioned this is the method that is typically used when light manufacturing, speedy manufacturing is occurring, is because all you need to do now to complete this production order, we entered production order number 29, all I need to do is select the final operation, which indicates not only did we complete this inspection, but we also completed the assembly, and enter the total quantity we completed. In our example was the 10, and re-release that move transaction. That's it. So if there's any Macola partners on the line, we hear a lot about the POP environment in Macola. This is somewhat similar to that. For those of you that are, again, not necessarily specific vendor carrier, but are really just looking to demonstrate Acumatica's manufacturing to a light manufacturer, this is what you would do. Enter the order, enter a move transaction to complete that order. And again, it would be for the final operation. And when we go back to the order now, we will see that the order is completed. So with that, we have now back flushed a number of our costs. If you remember my bill of materials, I didn't have all of my backflush settings turned on, and we also haven't manufactured all of the necessary sub-assemblies today. So we're getting some variance, which is what I expected. But if you look here, why do we have some of these actual costs now? They are coming from the move transaction that we just created. When we finished the inspection and when we finished the assembly, we created the whole order at once. We flushed these costs in from that bill. And if I would like to go under the event history, I can see exactly where those costs are coming from. I see my material cost here, and I can drill down to see what those materials are, which of course are going to be component parts because we didn't necessarily build our sub-assemblies today. So here we have a make to stock example where you are creating a production order based off of a replenishment suggestion. You can analyze the details of that order, such as the production ticket, the job traveler, but to quickly create the order, all you're doing is creating that move transaction, which we just did together. That can be done with our mobile shop floor data collection. So using tablets and using smartphones, those move transactions can be created, just like I showed you on my laptop today. Okay, so we completed our first make to stock example, and the thing I want you to keep in mind about some of the other examples, such as make to order, configure to order, is that what I've just showed you in this make to stock example, a lot of this does apply to some of the other manufacturing methods. So I will take you through a make to order example next, and you're going to see a lot of similarities and you will see some differences as well. Now recall, with the make to order method, we are typically starting with a customer sales order. So I'm going to go in and enter a new sales order. And let's drop in our AA customer. And then we're going to drop in the item that we've been using today, which is of course that Keurig. To get my, oh yeah, I took the branch out, never mind. So we've entered our Keurig. We will do a make to order example now. And we will just do a quantity of 1 to keep this nice and simple. And for a make to order item, if you notice, this checkbox right here called mark for production, which is probably hiding deep over here for those of you that haven't moved it front and center like I have. But this mark for production checkbox can either be automatically checked like it has here, or you can simply check that box if you would like to indicate that you want to go out and manufacture it. Now, the reason that it's been automatically checked for my Keurig is because on the stock item record, if you look under the manufacturing tab, there's a field called default mark for, and we selected production, and you can see that it's a make to order item. So that's why that checkbox is automatically populating for me. If you would also like your make to order items to automatically populate, you would need to select those fields. Now, what I can do, and again, this is not a sales order demonstration, so I'm not going to go through all of the nooks and crannies and the fun in the sales order entry at least, but from a make to order standpoint, I can now go out and generate production orders, production numbers to create my line items. Now, I can go through and create the make to order example with this Keurig right now, but I'm also going to do an example with a configure to order item. So we'll kind of do these in tandem here. But if you look now for my Keurig, on sales order number 5919, I now have production order number 30, which will allow me to manufacture that 1 Keurig that is required for this order. So we are making to order. Now in my configure to order example, I am going to enter, oops, if I could spell it, one of my configurable items in the system. And there are a few of these, but again, the old trusty that we typically show is a custom wooden baseball bat. So we are going to configure some of the options that need to go into this bat before we can actually manufacture it. And with the product configurator, with configurable items, you'll notice that there is no price dropped in initially because we haven't configured the item yet. But it does, of course, know that we need to manufacture this because we're configuring it from scratch. We certainly need to produce it. So I can click the configure button, and I did that kind of fast. For those of you that are new to the product configurator, when you add a configurable item, you will see the configure button is available. It is not available for my Keurig because that is not a configurable item. So we launched the configuration entry for our baseball bat. In other words, what type of features or options would you like to apply to this baseball bat? How do you want your baseball bat to look at the end of the day? And again, the way I have come to understand this is over on the left-hand side, these are our features. I like to think of this as the questions we are asking about the bat. What color is the handle going to be? What color is the body of the baseball bat going to be? What type of wood are we going to utilize? The options are then the answers to those questions. So we could have a black handle or a red handle or a blue handle, and you go through and configure the item based on the option in question. What you'll see is each one of these is also tied to inventory. So as I select black paint for my handle, the system is also going to tell the shop floor that they need to pull 0.25 gallons of black paint from inventory. So it's not just a field that is a text field that's indicating something. It's actually a true inventory and price-based field that is going to pull this item into the bill of materials for this order. And it's also going to start to roll up the price as we select the options here. Now, important thing about configurators is that they should be, and as Acumatica's is a rule-based product configurator. So those rules can mean you are either including options or excluding options based on an entry. Again, the example that we tend to utilize here is I have an exclude option set up that states that we will not be able to apply the same color to the engraving of our baseball bat or the lettering as we do to the body of that bat, because you would not be able to read it, right? The same color on top of the same color would not make for a visible or a readable text. So when we pick the black paint for the handle, and when we pick the black paint for the body of our baseball bat, that means when we get over to the engraving, as I stated, we do not see black as an option. You cannot read that on top of a black painted baseball bat. So we have excluded that rule. Now, this is just one example of what you might want to do with these include and exclude rules. You could also say, based on an entry, we're going to include something else. So it does work both ways. That exclude rule is set up for the baseball bat here. Okay, so I've gone through and I've selected all of my options or the answers here. Final thing to note is over on the attributes tab, these could be additional attributes that your or the users need to enter about the item. So it could be something like length, for example. They're saying enter the length of the bat. It needs to be between 30 and 35 inches. So we have 32 inches here. And you can see I also have a required attribute that is telling me, is it going to be an express option, yes or no? So just saying that you can have required attributes and they do not necessarily have to be required if you do not want to. And we finish this bat up, and I'll go back to the sales order, and we see that that new price based on the options we selected gets dropped into the line item. And just like I did for my basic make to order example, I can now create my configure to order production order. So we have our make to order Keurig, and we can now go through and create our configure to order baseball bat here, which I will do so. Now, what you can do, and where did my, maybe it wants me to do both of them. Let's go with that. Interesting. Well, what should have happened, my friends, is we should see a second production order here for the baseball bat, and I didn't get an error, so I'm actually not sure why, but I'll dig into that. And we also have the production order for the make to order example. So either way, you can drill into the resulting production order for your make to order or your configure to order, depending on who you're demoing to. Remember, I'm just doing both examples today because this is a training session. You typically don't need to go through both of these examples. So when we did that make to order for the Keurig, so we are not looking at the configure to order bat, we're looking at the make to order Keurig. Just note here under the references that you will always be able to see exactly which sales order you are actually manufacturing this for. So again, make to order, we are making this for this order. Now, the piece that I would like to highlight here is remember that the next step in your production demonstration depends on how your prospect is capturing their actual costs. Are they back flushing or are they issuing materials and labor? If you would like to demonstrate the latter now, so we have already done a back flushing example, and you would prefer to go in and create a material issue. Actually, let me make sure that my backflush settings are turned off here, so we can do that. And I'm not entirely sure if we have this inventory in stock, so we'll find out together. Now back on that production order, I should be able to release some materials. Cool, we do have some of those in stock. So instead of back flushing now, in other words, instead of automatically consuming the items from the bill, we're taking a secondary step here that suggests these are the 4 items that I am manually issuing to the job. In other words, I am creating a material transaction, a separate transaction that is going to hit this job to state exactly how many materials I used. The system knows based on the bill what I'm supposed to use and how many, but if I broke something and I need to, insert an additional quantity, we added a material that we didn't plan on using, those are the things that can get done here on this screen. So your material transaction allows you to create that material issue. I am showing you this from my laptop today, but please keep in mind that this can also be done from the mobile data collection. Using smartphones, using tablets, we can perform these material issues, the move transactions, and also the labor transactions, all from mobile. I have done a past session on mobile shop floor data collection that is posted on the portal, but we can do another one in the coming months here. Okay, so with that, we have just issued materials to this job, and similarly, we could go out and start to issue labor to the job by entering, just like we just saw with that material transaction, there is a separate transaction called a labor transaction. So when I go under my production orders, you'll see those 3 transactions we've been talking about, our move, our materials, and our labor. And this would be the way to physically have employees enter their time. I like to think of this as a timesheet. Again, not all manufacturers need to do this. Let's keep using that Keurig example. If all I do is manufacture Keurigs all day long and it takes me 10 minutes to manufacture every Keurig, and I manufactured 20 Keurigs today, I probably don't need to go into the system and enter a timesheet for every single Keurig that I worked on or every single order that I worked on. Back flushing is typically much more useful in that example. In this example, we are going to say that we did in fact work a specific amount of time on a specific order. So production order number 30 is the one that we just created on our sales order. I just went to the end of my list here and you can see that this is today's order. We can say that we were in fact working on the assembly operation. It wants to know which employee I am, so I'll just enter the employee. And then the shift is also going to indicate what rate they should be paid. So the employee and the shift against that direct labor code comes out with the appropriate rate. Now, if you would like to just enter start time and end time, we started at 10 and we ended at 11:30, feel free, or you could just, the 10 to 11:30 would come out here with your actual hour-and-a-half labor time, or you could just manually enter the labor time here. So this is a labor entry. These are performed when organizations are not back flushing their labor. And keep in mind, this is why manufacturing discovery is so important, my friends. You see that there is no one size fits all manufacturing demo. It's really, really important during your discoveries to identify how are you manufacturing, make to order, make to stock, configure to order. How are you capturing your costs? Are you bag flushing? Are you creating material transactions? The manufacturing discovery is so important because that is going to help you piece together what goes into your manufacturing demo. I know it sounds obvious, but it's really one of the best reminders that I can give everybody on this call today from an enablement perspective. Of course, in your demo, you can always go back and highlight your entries. So we see now the 1 hour and 30 minutes of labor that we just applied to this job. And of course, under our event history, that is all being tracked as well. Now, we are right up against the end of the hour. So I am going to stop at this point in time, and I'm just going to recap what we did today. We went through bills of material and production for manufacturing addition. I'm just looking for my agenda slide. There it is. So for those of you that are looking to demonstrate additional modules, the estimating module, MRP, which we did not have time to get to today, these are all separate sessions up on the portal. We are happy to work with you on any one of these areas if you're feeling unsure, you have questions. But do keep in mind, this is very, very important that your demo is going to be based on what you uncover during discovery, which is why I have created the deck to look like this. Now, I do see a few questions have come in, so let me see. I can answer most of these offline, but if you need to drop, feel free, but let me get to a few of them. When will the M100 and M200 be on the partner university? I believe they actually are already. Ahmed, I know at least M100 is up, but I'll need to check on M200, but I believe they all are already there. And let's see, some of the other ones were just comments, not questions. Toon, regarding the master planning schedule, is there an Excel sheet that shows? That is, yes, Toon, if you want to look at the session I did on the advanced manufacturing scheduling, there is a screen called rough cut capacity, and then there is the work center schedule screens that almost look like an Excel sheet, but they are our screens, the manufacturing Acumatica grids. So yes, I hope you all enjoyed this session today. Thank you so much for joining me on our first Friday back, and we will see you all next week for another Friday pre-sales webinar. Appreciate it.